I don't care how sick you are. I don't care how much you hurt. And I was in more pain than you could ever imagine. It's hard to have a bad day when you start your day off like that. I saw so many good things coming out of all of this that it encouraged me and it strengthened me. When you see good coming out of bad situations, it makes them not seem quite so bad.
Hello and welcome to Cancer Friends. I'm Andrew Schorr in San Diego, and joining me is a new friend from Monroe, Louisiana, in northeastern Louisiana, and that's Alan Stephenson. Alan, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Alan, let me tell the folks a little bit about you. And that is, as I understand, you've been in business for years, and in the investment business, you're a financial planner, been investing in stocks since you were a kid, and you're a businessman and active in your community. 3 children, 2 grandchildren, your wife Miriam of more than 30 years. But cancer intervened in your life. Now, we're going to get to that. Were you, before cancer, pretty healthy guy, pretty active guy?
Oh, yeah, very active. Hunting, fishing, shooting archery tournaments, scuba diving, spearfishing, just very active. I mean, I like being outdoors.
Okay, and how would you describe your personality growing up and being in business? Were you an easygoing guy?
I would say in some ways, yes, but for the most part, type A, fairly aggressive personality, very driven. And, I think most people would say I was a real nice guy and fairly generous, but a little bit of a light switch type personality, I guess you would say.
In 2015, you sneezed. That's not a big deal, but what happened to you?
Well, it was a big deal for me. I was standing in my kitchen and watching television while I was grabbing a bite to eat, and I sneezed and it put me on the floor. It injured my back, and I was pretty sure I'd fractured some ribs. I've had fractured ribs before. I've been kind of hard on my body over the years. And, it just, I'm telling you, I couldn't hardly breathe. It hurt so bad.
Okay. Now, you were having other back problems, and you were telling your wife you're probably a candidate for back surgery, right?
Right. Well, back problems were not really new to me because I grew up, like I said, being pretty hard on my body. As I call it, when I was young, I thought I was 9 feet tall and bulletproof. So grew up riding motocross bikes and survived a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have. And it took a toll on my body. So even though I was very healthy, I'd had a lot of old injuries, and I just thought it was old injuries coming back to haunt me. And I told her that in late 2015 that I just couldn't keep living like I was because I was in so much pain.
But it wasn't only the pain. You were having chest congestion and you were sick.
Yeah, for the most part, I just didn't have any energy. And I thought that was because of the pain that I was in, just wearing me down. I do have a very high pain tolerance. As I tell people, you got to be tough when you're stupid. And I spent a lot of stupid years. So I didn't go to the doctor. I mean, I was kind of raised where you don't go to the doctor unless the bone's showing. So, even after I sneezed and injured myself, I didn't go to the doctor, and I kept getting sick with chest congestion and fever. It seemed like every 2 or 3 months I would get really sick and I have a hard time shaking it. And I just never put 2 and 2 together.
Okay, well, how did 2 and 2 get together? How did you eventually get to a doctor, and then tell us what happened?
Well, two and two came together on March 30th of 2016. I was sick once again, real bad chest congestion, fever. I was sleeping in our upstairs bedroom so that I didn't get my wife sick. And I got in the shower and the steam made me start coughing, and the pain was just indescribable. Every time I coughed, it just seemed like my back was just about to break in half. And little did I know it was. I actually got on my hands and knees in the shower right before my L5 vertebra collapsed. And for those people that don't know, multiple myeloma is a cancer of the blood that makes your bones basically disintegrate and become brittle. And that's why my back broke.
Right. But this is before you even knew you had multiple
Exactly.
myeloma or knew anything about this. So you went to the local doctor or local hospital, I imagine. Maybe
Not
your wife had
immediately.
to kick you
Not.
in the pants to do it.
I was at home alone, and you know, I have been blessed, like I said, with a pretty high pain tolerance. So I was able to turn the water off. I eventually was able to stand up and dry off, and I got dressed, and I had to crawl down my stairs and went and drug myself. I drive a four-wheel drive truck that's fairly high off the ground, and I had to drag myself into the truck, and I went to work. So my assistant had to come outside and help me out of my truck. I couldn't get out, and I was walking like I'd had a stroke. I couldn't pick my feet up. I was having to shuffle them across the ground. And I stayed at work that day, and that night I spent most of the night in tears, I don't mind saying. And the next day I went to see my primary care doctor, and he wanted me to go to the emergency room, and I wouldn't go. And I basically walked around for a week and a half on a collapsed vertebra, waiting for the MRI results, or to get it done and get the results. And
Okay. The results come. What happened?
so they did the test on, did the MRI on a Friday. And it was so funny because as I was walking out of his office, the doctor's office, and he's a buddy of mine. And I asked him, I said, what are the chances you think I have bone cancer? And he just looked at me funny. He said, I wasn't even thinking that way until you said that. So anyway, they did the test on a Friday. He called me on Monday morning and said that he said, you were right, it's cancer and it's bad. He said, I've got you a room reserved. You need to be there either today or in the morning at the latest. And I said, all right, I'll be there in the morning. I've got some work I've got to finish up. And so anyway, they put me in my local hospital, and that's when the adventure started, I guess you would say.
Well, let's carry on from there. But clearly, what you described, you were a type A guy for sure, driven by work, typical man. Not all men are this way, but trying to ignore the pain, push forward, not wanting to go to the doctor until maybe the very 11th hour. So now you're in the hospital, in the local hospital.
Right.
And they tell you they think it's this cancer, multiple myeloma. Do they tell you that?
Yes, and I don't know how much you want to know about this, but I had a bad reaction to some pain meds when they first put me in the hospital. And I woke up the next day running 103 fever with the room spinning and nauseous, and I was shaking like I was having seizures. Basically, the pain meds had shut down my digestive system. And I don't really remember much of those first few days, but during that time, they were able to do a bone marrow biopsy, and they told my wife, my family, that that it looked like it was multiple myeloma, and they wanted me to go to UAMS.
Now, let's talk about that too. So first of all, I'm sure, I would think you hadn't heard of multiple myeloma. I mean, it's not uncommon, but it's not common. It's often in people older than you. I can't recall how old you were at this time. How old were you?
I was almost 49 when, in fact, I turned 49 the day that the day before they started my treatments.
Oh my goodness. So, happy birthday, my goodness. So you would have been a younger myeloma patient, probably not familiar with it. And they tell you that you need to go to a special center. for it, not in Louisiana, in Arkansas, in Little Rock. So how did you feel about that, that you had to up and go somewhere to deal with this illness that you'd probably never heard of?
Well, you're right. I had never heard of it. The only thing I knew, and of course, like I said, I don't really remember a lot about those first few days, but I remember they said, don't Google it. And for once in my life, I actually did what I was told, and I didn't Google it. My wife did, so she knew how serious things were. And because I hadn't heard of multiple myeloma, I was thinking, well, that's just a junior league cancer, you know. It's not pancreatic cancer, it's not brain cancer. I'll be all right. And anyway, so yeah, you know, as far as going out of state, the fear of the unknown is probably as bad as anything else. And you know, I even made it worse because I was in the hospital. I went in the hospital on a Tuesday, and of course on Wednesday I woke up sick and I couldn't eat, and they had to do a vertebroplasty to rebuild my L5 vertebra, and that's where they go in and inject cement and rebuild the vertebra. They were just trying to do that just to get me to Little Rock, and you know, I didn't really have a lot of time to think about it, I guess you would say, during those first few days. I got out of the hospital. I went on Tuesday. I got out on Sunday. I lied to them, told them I could eat. and finally, about Thursday, I got to where I could eat. I'd lost, from Tuesday until Thursday, I'd lost 18 pounds. And UAMS called me on Friday and said, when can you be here? And I said, well, it doesn't really matter, as soon as possible. And they said, be here Monday. And I said, okay, and hung up the phone. I didn't ask them, am I going to be doing testing? You know, how long am I going to be there? Am I going to start treatments? I didn't know if I was going to be there for an hour or a month. And I had no business talking to anybody on the phone. So I should have just passed that phone off to my wife and let her handle things at that point. But I didn't. So we went to UAMS with absolutely no knowledge of how long we were going to be there or what to expect. And that was terrifying. It really was. And I am fortunate that that's only about a 3.5-hour drive from my house. But
right. Well, it's still, people want to feel they can get expert care close to home. You were in a more, not a rural area, but not a big city area.
right.
And we should say that UAMS, or University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, is one of the foremost places in the world for the treatment of multiple myeloma. World experts there, renowned. So you go there, not knowing if you'll be there an hour or a month.
Right.
How long were you there?
4 days. 4 days. But I'd like to tell you a little story about something that happened when we first got there. So we check in, we go into the waiting room, sit down, and we're just waiting for, you know, them to come out and just have that initial meeting with us. And this man walks up to us, and we call him camper man now, but he walks up to us and he says, are you new here? And I said, yeah. He said, multiple myeloma? Yes, sir. He said, man, you're in the best place in the world to be treated for multiple myeloma. He said, when I came here 7 years ago, he said, I was in a wheelchair. Everybody thought I was a dead man. He said, now I'm back working my cattle in Oklahoma, and I'm doing great. I just come here once a year for a checkup. And I was like, oh, congratulations. That's awesome. You know, I'm so happy for you. Thank you for sharing that. And then he said, yeah, but it took a while. So I just moved my camper here and lived here for 2 years while they treated me. And I will tell you, at that moment, my world stopped. My world stopped. It hit me that I had no clue what we were in for. And he just kept talking, and I looked over at my wife, and just the look on her face just broke my heart.
So, Alan, you went through a broad range of treatments,
Right.
two transplants, lots of meds. So, over the course of the treatment, how long was all that more intense time with University of Arkansas?
So I went through 2 real hard rounds of chemo. Was up there for, we'd go up for a few days of testing, come home for 2 days or 3 days or whatever, and then go back up, since it was close to home. And I was there for about a month for each of those treatments, with about a month break in between. And then I went back and did my first stem cell transplant and realized they were just playing the first 2 times. So the stem cell transplant, I was up there for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. Came home for 2 months, went back, did another stem cell transplant, and had about a 2-month break, went back for a checkup. They said I was doing really well. So then they started another treatment. So basically it took about a year of being treated up there to get me in remission. And then I started maintenance treatments locally, and going back to UAMS every quarter in the beginning for testing, but I was doing treatments locally. So I did a total of 4 years of treatments.
Now, as we do this interview, you are in remission, right? I think you still take some maintenance medicine.
No, I'm actually, the last treatment I had was April of 2020. And so I do have some medications that I still have to take because my immune system probably won't ever be quite right, but I take some antivirals and things, but that's really it now.
Wow. Well, Alan, let's talk about how this changed you. Okay. So here's the guy in the shower enduring tremendous pain. He literally had to be dragged to the doctor. I see you driving in your truck to work when you should be in the hospital. Anyway, we talked about being a type A person, driven, dedicated to your clients and financial planning and your family. And what changed you?
I changed a lot. There are those defining moments in your life that I think we all, when we look back our lives and say, this one instance changed us in some way. I have quite a few of those. For me, I can really pinpoint it down to one moment. That day that we had our encounter with Camper Man, I guess you would say, we were just on this emotional roller coaster because it hit us. When he was talking, I was sitting next to my wife and I sent her a text and it said, "This just got real." And we were on this emotional roller coaster. One minute I'm thinking, I'll be all right. The next minute we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I've got a business. I've got, a daughter that was my daughter, I think, was 14 at the time, 13 or 14 at the time. My sons were older, but I had no clue what we were going to do. I had no clue how I was going to provide for my family. Luckily, being in the financial industry, I can work from anywhere, as long as I have an internet connection and a phone. But it was just terrifying. And about the time one of us would kind of get it all together, and be strong, the other one would fall apart, and at UAMS, they have these wonderful volunteers, and we had one named Judy, and the volunteers take new patients around to their testing. She was just an angel. I had to go for a bone marrow biopsy, and the doctor that was doing it, he tells me, he said, I'm going to give you a local anesthetic, and I'm going to drill a hole in your hip bone and open that enclosed cavity to air, and I'm going to stick a needle in there and draw fluid out. And he said, the pain is going to be off the charts, and there's nothing we can do about it. He said, the good news is it'll be over really quick. I don't mind telling you, I was a little bit nervous. They'd already done one on me, but they knocked me out for that one. And he starts talking to me. He said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a financial advisor. I'm a lot smarter than I look." Well, he started laughing, and we kind of hit it off. Anyway, after it was all over with, I was, getting dressed, I was pulling my pants up over this big diaper-sized bandage on my hip, and he said, "Before you go, here's my name and number." He said, "I want you to call me so we can discuss you being my financial advisor." At that very moment, my life changed. I had a peace wash over me that is really hard to explain. I knew it was God telling me everything was going to be all right. I knew that he was telling me, "Hey, your business might even grow because of this. You don't need to worry about taking care of your family." And I know a lot of people don't understand this, but from that moment forward, I didn't worry about whether I was going to live or die. I didn't worry about providing for my family. I didn't worry about the treatments. I just didn't worry. I had peace for probably the first time in my life. And I changed at that very moment. I've actually shared this story with that doctor. He and I became friends, and I've got his cell phone number now. And, I think it had an impact on him too. I found peace for the first time in my life. I had somebody ask me one time, when this is all said and done, what do you want to take away with it? What was important to you? And that peace, I wouldn't change it for anything. And because I got that peace, I'm a lot more, and because I've been through this, I'm a lot more thoughtful of others. I am so much more appreciative of my family and friends. When I was going through treatments, my phone would start going off at 6:30 in the morning from people all over the country that just tell me that they loved me, they were praying for me, they were wishing me the best, they were thinking about me. And I was in so much pain. I had so much damage to my body, which we really haven't talked about. And I don't care how sick you are, because that chemo was strong. I mean, it was so strong. I didn't have a hair left on my body. I don't care how sick you are. I don't care how much you hurt. And I was in more pain than you could ever imagine. It's hard to have a bad day when you start your day off like that. And I saw so many good things coming out of all of this that it encouraged me and it strengthened me. When you see good coming out of bad situations, it makes them not seem quite so bad.
Boy, Alan, let's talk about what's happened. Now, you said did a lot to your body, so you're probably not the same guy physically that you were before. How are you doing physically?
Well, to understand what I mean by that, the damage to my body, found out the reason I had been in so much pain was I had fractures in almost every vertebra. I had clusters of fractures like spider webs through my ribs on both sides. I had close to 150 lesions on my bones, like holes in my bones, from my thighs to my skull, and 60% of the cells in my bone marrow was cancerous. I asked my doctor, I said, if I refuse treatments, how long do you think I have? And he said, maybe 3 months. So I was right there at the end. And they did the vertebroplasty on my L5. They did 3 kyphoplasty on the vertebra between my shoulder blades. I don't remember the numbers, but the fractures were so bad that they were afraid I would get pneumonia because I was breathing so shallow. I could feel my vertebrae separating when I would take a breath. When I rolled over in the bed or had to get up out of a chair, I had to hold my ribs, or I had to keep them wrapped up to keep them from moving around. That's pretty uncomfortable, I'll tell you that. So yeah, I had a lot of damage to my body. They did a really good job of patching me up though. I'm in pain all the time. I can't lie about that, but it's tolerable. Like I said, I'm blessed with a pretty high pain tolerance. Sometimes it wears me down, but I live a very normal life. I mean, I mow my yard. I do a lot of things. Doctors tell me not to, but doing things that I didn't feel like doing is what helped me recover. I actually started shooting archery tournaments again while I was still going through chemo. And right after they patched me up, I couldn't shoot any of my bows. My daughter had one. And so I got it. And, I was used to shooting these super high powered compound bows, that throw arrows like lightning bolts. And I was at the archery tournaments, shooting arrows that look like a rainbow. And, but once again, my archery friends, they took good care of me. So,
And hunting and fishing, are you back to that?
yeah, I've been working a little bit more than I should be probably. We've got a couple other businesses now, but yeah, I do that. I've got about 5 acres of land. I keep that up. And, a few weeks ago, I was running a chainsaw. I went scuba diving last month. So,
Did you ever think when you were lying there in the hospital that you would have this second life?
I didn't know for certain that it would happen, but I knew if it didn't happen, I'd go down swinging.
I imagine you now more relaxed than the person I envisioned before that. Maybe I'm
I
wrong, but
am.
it seems like you are. Let me ask you this. And for people who knew you, they knew you were a really sick puppy. But now you're out and about, whether archery, hunting, fishing, doing business, working with your clients, working with your family. Do you feel that just you being there gives other people faith that there's been progress in cancer and that there can be, for not everyone, but for many people, life after cancer?
Without a doubt. I get a lot of people referred to me because, as you said, a lot of people haven't heard about multiple myeloma. When I was diagnosed, I did not know anybody that had it. My parents did. And when I went to UAMS for my first round of treatments, he called me. And I'd never met him, or if I had, I didn't remember meeting him. I knew his name. But anyway, he called me and he said, not only am I in Little Rock right now, he said, but I'm in the same apartment complex 2 doors down. And so I went down and visited with him, and he told me his story and how he could barely walk when he first went there. And this was a man that was, I think, 70 when he was diagnosed. And he said, last weekend I was riding my horse. And that gave me some hope. And I've tried to pass along what he did for me to others. So I get a lot of people referred to me from around the country through various friends and organizations. And I always try to have this conversation with them of, number one, to tell them what to expect. And number two is to give them hope. The big message that I always try to, and I do some public speaking, I've been sent to some events and things, but the message that I try to tell people, give people and leave them with is, we have a conscious decision to make. It is our decision on how we're going to deal with the tragedies and the difficulties that come on along in our lives. And it may be health, it may be marriage, it may be, whatever, business, whatever. But we have to make that conscious decision of who we're going to be and how people are going to remember us, whether it be we die tomorrow or 30 years from now. What is our legacy going to be? Was my family going to remember a guy that was angry or felt sorry for himself? Or was my family going to remember the guy that laughed when all of his hair fell out and half his mustache fell out and the other side was still there like normal? And that actually happened twice. And the first time it happened, I walked around the house with half a mustache for 3 days because I thought it was funny. It's changed me in many ways. And I try to help others in any time I can.
Alan, one last question, and that is, you've had all this treatment. Right now, you're not having any treatment. The medical team has kind of rebuilt your body. but you still have the reminder with the pain, but you go on in a very positive way. How do you view the future?
I know the chances of multiple myeloma coming back are pretty high. I don't think the good Lord's done with me yet. I'm just trying to do a little good while I'm here, whether it be short time or a long time. I've got a lot of young people around me that are just amazing that I try to mentor, and I love seeing them grow and in business and in their confidence and their abilities. Try to help people that are fighting this multiple myeloma. You know, I can help those people, and I want to in any way that I can. I'm going to have some fun while I'm here, deal with the things that aren't fun to the best of my ability. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better friend. I'm more spiritual. I'm Christian. I'm closer to God than I've ever been. And at the end of the day, I mean, I wouldn't change any of this, as hard as it's been. Now, some days it's easier to say that than others, but I wouldn't change it. In many ways, one of the best things ever happened to me.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us on our Cancer Friends program. Alan Stephenson joining us from Louisiana, Andrew Schorr here, as we get to know someone, in this case with multiple myeloma, but also with, I think, some inspiration and lessons for anybody who's affected by cancer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.